All right.
There have been some interesting developments in civic politics in Vancouver. On October 16th, the city used its injunction to dismantle Tent City at Oppenheimer Park. What was Tent City? Who lived there? And where did they go? These are some of the questions we are going to answer for you on this special edition of Access Television. I'm Molly Caron.
The rise and fall of the homeless camp in Oppenheimer Park is an epic tale. I'm L.J. Meyer. Unfortunately, I can't fit all the details into this short report, but I can give you some of the highlights of this amazing story. City Hall promised to end street homelessness by 2015. However, activists in the downtown east side have been protesting increased homelessness for years. The preliminary report on the homeless count in March 2014 showed Vancouver's street homelessness increased by 249% since the last Metro Vancouver count in 2011. Even so, the city still claimed that it could solve street homelessness by 2015.
Interim and supportive housing units, our winter shelters and our rent subs all come. We could solve street homelessness and take about 230 people off the total homeless list, which would be a major accomplishment and definitely in the realm of possibility. This is not magical thinking. It will require some resources, but it absolutely can be done.
About mid-July, homeless people began setting up tents in Oppenheimer Park. The city tried to evict them, but Aboriginal leaders in the downtown east side stepped in.
I was walking by Oppenheimer Park and I noticed 4 park rangers and 1 Oppenheimer Park staff member going around handing out notices to those that were camped here. Took notice of one that stated that they needed to leave within 24 hours. I went on the computer and let them know that we need to stand in solidarity with the people that are getting evicted.
Since the park was on unceded Aboriginal land, Aboriginal leaders claimed back the park and set up a homeless camp.
A few days later, they sent us an eviction notice, and basically we sent an eviction notice back.
At first, the Aboriginals' camp formed a small circle in the center of the park. Everyone was welcome in the Aboriginals' camp, provided they were not under the influence of drugs or alcohol. There was a kitchen, a longhouse, and a sacred fire in the middle of the camp. I was not permitted to shoot the sacred fire. There was also an outer ring of people camping in the park. Many were people with drug and alcohol issues. Camp leaders and city officials had cordial discussions about arranging housing for the homeless. City officials and camp leaders also cooperated around the operation of the camp. For example, the Vancouver Fire Department worked with camp leaders to reduce fire hazards. Camp leaders and city officials also worked out a deal to reopen the women's washroom. However, there were problems as the camp grew. Some people arriving at Tent City had issues that made them difficult to house or deal with anywhere. The behaviors of some of the residents were hard for the camp to manage and made the camp look bad. To its credit, the camp never turned anyone away that I know of, and only ever asked a couple of people to leave. A split also developed in the leadership of the camp. The sacred fire and the longhouse were taken away, and the camp changed its leadership on September 23rd.
Okay, we want this community to work. We gotta work together.
On September 25th, the city served the campers with an injunction.
So we're going to hand out some to some of the campers, so you know. Okay. Sure. So this is. I was telling Stella that the city's gone to court today to get a court hearing on Monday to ask a judge to say campers need to go. Nothing's going to change. No one's running around in here doing enforcement. There's nobody sweeping in to move campers. But we're going to go to court and talk to the judge to say time has come. It's time to move on, and we'll see if the judge gives us authority. But I just wanted to come down in person and let you know, face to face.
So how did it come to this?
Well, we just think that with the rain coming and the deterioration and the conditions and safety, and we think we've got some housing options that make some sense. They may not be what everyone thinks is perfect, but we think all the information's there. So,
which housing? Are you talking about the shelter?
Shelter, and then we got a hotel.
I'm at the shelter, okay? You can't even take a shower there.
the new camp leaders attempted to move the camp to a field in Stanley Park. It is not hard to imagine what the political impact of a homeless camp in this location would have been. However, it is hard to imagine how a camp of this size could be moved before police swooped in. Even so, a camper van and about 4 cars from the camp succeeded in reaching the new location. The police blocked the entrances to the park so that nobody else from the camp could get in.
10 o'clock, if you're not out there, you'll be arrested, and if you stay, I mean, you're making a stand.
Let's go back. Open time.
Facing arrest, the campers inside Stanley Park decided to leave peacefully.
The sacred fire's being relit.
After the camp move failed, the leadership changed again. Some of the original leaders stepped forward, and the sacred fire was relit. The BC Supreme Court upheld the injunction and ordered the campers out of the park.
Today the court granted an injunction requiring everyone living in that park and surviving in that park to vacate by next Wednesday, October 15th at 10 p.m. In giving the order that everyone must vacate the camp by the 15th, she noted that the city's evidence indicates that they have housing coming online in mid-October. She said, I ordered Wednesday the 15th as a safety measure because the city says that there is housing coming online mid-October, and I understand that to be October 15th. What there is no evidence of is that any single person in that camp will have access to any of that housing. The judge was unable to determine if there are enough shelter beds for the people who are in the camp right now, and we have been tracking shelter beds for over a week, and what we know is that there are well over 100 people living in that camp and well under 100 shelter beds in this entire city.
Many people moved into shelters in the days prior to the injunction. A dead body was discovered in one of the tents at about 1 p.m. on October 15th. The city claimed that this showed why tent camps were unsafe.
Apparently it's natural causes, it's not homicide or an overdose, just someone that's passed away. Hopefully this is an eye-opener for the city that people need housing.
So where are you taking off to?
I don't know.
Our inquiries showed that the shelters were getting full and that there were still over 100 tents in the park. On the day of the injunction, the city claimed that there were still shelter beds. However, calls to 211, the shelter hotline, showed that the shelters were full.
We've called all the shelters and nobody's taking that space.
After repeated phoning, we were told that there were spaces left at the Union Gospel Mission and at 900 Pacific. However, we also had reports that people were being turned away from those same places at the same time.
Did you try to get into the UGM last night? I tried to get into the UGM. It was a nightmare. It was packed solid, so...
When the police and city officials attempted to execute the order, they were drummed out of the camp. Though the city promised not to do anything until 9 a.m. the next day, rumors were circulating about a coming police takedown. It was a sleepless night for many in the camp. Camp leaders and city officials negotiated a peaceful resolution. Those who wanted to go peacefully would have the time to pack up and go peacefully. Those who wanted to stay and protest could stay, but would be arrested.
9 o'clock is when the city is going to be showing up with their support workers to try and accommodate and make sure that we can get people into accommodation. If you're a camper here, they're going to give you one big bin. They can store it up to 30 days. Anything that can't fit in there, it's going to get trashed unless you find an alternative to put your stuff away. The second thing is, cops are not going to come in here right now, right away to start enforcing and coming in with their billy clubs and stuff like that. So anybody who tells you any different, that's not going to happen. Now, I understand that there's some people that don't want to go. That's fine. That's a choice that you make. But you need to understand when you make that choice, you are making the conscious choice to go in contempt of court. So that puts you in subject to being arrested. So you need to know that as a fact. So that's your conscious choice. And after talking with some of the people last night, I really understand and empathize for you, because you're basically saying, well, if they put me in jail, at least I got a place to stay. And for that, that makes me feel like, holy crap, right? Yeah. So, you know, if that's your only alternative, then you need to know that there will be charges. And if you do choose to go that route, don't resist. Don't put up the fight, because then there'll be more charges. And then that'll count against you too. So be as peaceful as you can, so you protect yourself, so you're not going to get a knee in the back of the head and tossed around and stuff like that. Make sure that you keep yourself safe at all times, all right?
Most people decided to pack up.
Well, I opted into them finding us, moving us to a shelter, only because I had an injury and I was forced to leave by the fire chief. And the first shelter that I booked in, the Beacon, put on by the Salvation Army, was full. They said that we had a different rule since we were coming from Oppenheimer, and our whole flight was about the conditions of shelters. So we had some special rules for a couple of days, and then they just went back to the same old, you're out at 6:30, you do what we say, you get no special treatment, and it was disappointing.
The first thing that authorities did when they moved into the park was to close the washrooms.
Two separate toilets. These are additional toilets that can be used, and we have the directions for them if people need to use
okay, where are they?
One's 508...
528
Powell.
And 412 East Cordova.
I have been going through and interviewing the people living in the tents last night and this morning. I have not spoken to anyone who has a place to stay. There may be people here who do, but I have not spoken to any of them, and I've interviewed maybe 15 to 20 people in the last 24 hours.
See, that was my impression too from last night, because we talked to our folks as well. We said they had nowhere to go. They were going to, some of them were going to go to Stanley Park. Some of them were going to go, you know, they'll spread out and they'll find a place to go, but not in the shelters, because they called 211 and there's no room.
So ready to roll. You know, look at that spider. You're eating up Rhodium spiders from their home.
Going in a
I missed the 9:30 sunshine.
By the end of the day, the park was looking empty, and the fire department was helping the remaining tenters to pack up.
The takedown was not completely peaceful. 5 campers decided to stay on and risk arrest.
I was homeless before any of this tents got here in the first place. My name is Humchitt. I'm a Hamatsa warrior. But I'm here for a cause, and I'm not going to get moved into a shelter where I don't want to go, because that's where we started, that's where we in the beginning.
So you're going to stay on after?
I'm going to stay on.
Understand, company, Rudy!
I'm happy with the shelters that they're going to give us. I'm not. I despise it.
What happened to Aboriginals when we're doing the ceremony?
please. Thank you.
I'm not going nowhere. They're telling me not to go, so I'm staying.
Occupants of the tent and the burgundy tent. This is the Vancouver Police Department. We're here to enforce the Supreme Court order of the occupation of Oppenheimer Park. We require you to exit your tent. Do you understand? Will you exit your tent?
I'm trying to give you as much as I can.
You got a lighter.
You got a lighter?
My boss made this lighter, right? My boss, oh, you step on me. It's like, step on me. Why would he step on me?
They gotta realize what they're doing to actually homeless. You know, they're kicking us from the square to the street.
Fortunately, the protesters were released the next day without charges. After the city took down the tent city, where did the people go?
Though the city says that there are shelter spaces for everyone in the park, it is not the case that everyone in the park went into shelters. We are going to talk to former residents of the Oppenheimer tent city who are now living either intermittently or completely on the street.
Woke up on the street over there.
I'm Agatha.
We slept for a while.
And we've been sleeping right over there. That's our territory there.
Yeah, over there.
And then we sleep on the street over there in Hastings in Maine there.
How has it gone for you since they've dismantled Tent City?
Nothing's changed. Everything's still the same. I went from homeless to homelessness, so I'm still couch surfing, so it's the same as it was before, right? Oh yeah, I've been stuck in the rain, the wind.
Were you outside at all?
Yeah, I've been able to tolerate a couple days in the shelter, and then I have to leave. It's just
You'd prefer to be outside?
I do not. I do not prefer to be outside. I prefer to be warm and comfortable and in a bed and allowed to have my own thoughts and allowed to have my dignity. I think sleeping outside has its advantages and it has its disadvantage. And the disadvantage is it's cold, it's wet, it's lonely, it's scary, it's dangerous, and it's less than I deserve. The advantage, at least I have some dignity.
What was being arrested like?
It's the same as always, try to interrogate you, ask you questions. No, I did it for a cause.
Where are you guys going to go?
Kind of don't know at this point. Probably another park, or we were looking for a place.
Yeah.
Currently.
I was at Stanley Park for the past almost 5 years in a hollowed out tree.
Wow. Oh, were you near that area where they had the fire?
Yes, I was one of them that got torched.
And so are you going to head back there after they push you out of Tent City?
Most likely, yes.
Yeah.
Some people, such as Scott, are not doing well.
And then I come over here, this is where I slept. I slept for about 2 hours. Since Tuesday morning, 6 o'clock, I might have had 4 hours sleep. The dormitory scene, I can't be in it. Because of my childhood, I was molested in a dormitory. I have major flashbacks. I have nightmares. It brings violence out of me.
What you see is how Scott was in Tent City. What you hear is how he was 10 days later.
My health has deteriorated since they shut the Tent City down because I don't have a stable place now. The shelters, they get you up at 6 o'clock in the morning, they kick you out. You don't get proper rest. You take abuse. It's worse than being in jail. You go to jail, you lose your freedom. You go to the shelter, you lose your freedom. You go to jail, you don't lose your freedom by choice. I spent 18 years locked away. The last thing I want to do is give my freedom up with my own free will.
So you'd rather be in jail?
I'd rather be in jail or dead. I'm actually God.
How does homelessness and poverty affect your health? Well, Dr. Gary Bloch has been examining the effects of poverty on health, and he has quite a bit to say on the topic. Let's have a listen.
Well, poverty is the biggest determinant of people's health. Poverty has an impact right through people's bodies. It affects their physical health, their mental health, their ability to just participate in society. I mean, the health evidence shows that poverty affects every part of people's bodies. So we see higher rates of chronic illness like diabetes, heart disease, cancer, kidney disease. We see higher rates of acute illness, like people just getting sick, coughs, colds, sinus infections. We see higher rates of accidents and trauma amongst people who live in poverty, and certainly higher rates of mental illness. So for my patients who live in poverty, I see all of these conditions. I see them at a more advanced stage, and I see them happening earlier than I see in other people.
I've had 21 heart attacks. 3 many strokes. I've got congestive heart failure, which have been the final stages.
Yeah.
I've got COPD.
Yeah.
So it's a matter of time.
Poverty acts at a number of levels. First of all, people are just struggling to survive, get the basics of life, get decent food, decent housing, decent clothing. So that in itself can have a pretty obvious impact on health. But beyond that, we have to look at the effects of living under the chronic stress of poverty. And we know from health studies that people who live in poverty have higher levels of stress hormones, and these act right through their bodies and probably explain at least part of the health impacts of poverty. And then there's also a piece around just access to decent health care. It can be very hard for someone who lives in poverty to get in to see a healthcare provider, and health settings are not necessarily welcoming to people who live in poverty. It's well known that there is discrimination in the health sector against poor people and against people who are homeless. And in fact, most people who have experienced extreme poverty report having problems when they go see health providers.
I'll give you a story.
You're telling me right now, if I call an ambulance right now and they take you to the emergency room, they're going to send you home with that?
They did already.
I'm saying if I do that right now, they're going to send you home with that.
They did already. I went to the doctors right here.
Stop. We're talking about right here, right now.
I've been there 22 times.
Well, they'll have problems right from just the sort of person-to-person interaction, and will feel a sense of judgment and prejudice from the healthcare provider. We'll also sometimes have problems about being able to keep up with the rules of a practice, right? I mean, to make an appointment on time, when you got to go to the welfare office, when you got to go to a housing office, and that's conflicting with the time of your appointment, and so you miss it, and then your health provider gets mad at you because you've done that, and you just don't feel comfortable later on. Sometimes they have problems just affording what needs to be done. There are some doctors who will charge for certain services, for instance, like writing notes or certain types of visits, and people who live in poverty just can't afford that. And then on a bigger level, I mean, being able to afford things like medications that are prescribed, right? I mean, there are many doctors who will prescribe medication without asking how it's going to be paid for, and they might prescribe something that's not covered for that person. And, you know, the patient may not feel comfortable letting their doctor know that, so just ends up not taking the medication.
So what should healthcare providers do?
I think it needs to happen on a couple of levels. I think just at the level of individual relations between providers and their patients, we need to be making sure that we're treating people respectfully. We need to make sure that we're not putting barriers up to people coming in and seeing us as health providers. I think we also need to make sure that we can guide our patients to social supports, to income supports, to housing supports, to make sure they're accessing all of the social supports that they should be accessing. But then on the even bigger level, I think providers need to be speaking to decision makers, to government, to other people who hold the big purse strings in our society, and saying we need to put in place big level programs to treat poverty, to treat homelessness, to treat these big social diseases that we face in our society.
Luke Drewitt is a singer-songwriter who lived in Tent City up until its dismantlement. Deputy Fire Chief Steve Leleune pointed out his talents and introduced us. This song is called Normal People. Seriously, folks, somebody's got to hire this guy. This is Molly Caron, shamelessly promoting our friends and community. Carry on.
Normal people don't inject their drugs. They don't bathe in the ocean. They don't live in a tent. They would never stay out all night collecting cans and selling merch. And they certainly don't push shopping carts around. They're normal, that's why they don't take dumps outside. They don't eat from the garbage, they don't neglect their rent. They would never stay out all night collecting cans and selling merch. And they certainly don't push shopping carts around. They own companies and condos and cars. They have careers. They would never stay out all night collecting cans and selling merch. And they don't push shopping carts around. They think it's absurd that I would push a shopping cart around, rummage in dumpsters all night long. But what they fail to realize is that if they wore my shoes, they would be the ones singing this song. They're normal, that's why they don't inject their drugs.